All right, so this says that we're live. I'm just going to double check over here and see if it's actually live. If you're joining us,
It looks like we're running at 11, 14, 15 seconds now.
Yep, we are live, so that's fun. All right, so today we have an interview. We're going to talk about who am I without you and kind of focusing on your identity after heartbreak and breakups and all of that. And we've got Dr. Breann Fox with us today, and I'm so excited. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself so I make sure you get all of your information in there and I don't mess it up. So go ahead.
Perfect. The thing I like the most, talking about myself. So I'm Dr. Breann Fox. I'm a physical therapist by license, but I do so much more stuff than that. I do a lot of mind-body integration. And so I work with women, professional women specifically, to overcome lost labels and overwhelm so that they can live the life they desire, elevating relationships and their energy. So I'm excited to be here today. Thank you guys so much. I hope we can really dive in and you guys can take home some nuggets that will help you with anything related to identity.
Cool. So tell us a little bit. You are not unique in the sense that we all have our heartbreak story. Tell us a little bit about your heartbreak story and kind of where you came from.
Yeah. So there's layers. So I think when we talk identity, growing up, I was this high-level soccer player. That was my identity, whether it was in school or club or, even out of state, college coaches recruiting. It was Breann, the soccer player, right? So I captured this identity, and at the end of the day, without soccer, who was I? But I wasn't at a place in my life where I understood that. I was just Breann, the soccer player. And I think where that really came to haunt me, if you will, was shortly after college. I played a couple years semi-professionally, and then I had a career-ending injury that just shifted everything for me. I no longer could play, and I didn't have a career per se. I was a college grad, but I hadn't really dove into a career thinking like, oh, well, if I had a career, then I would be Breann the whatever, right? And shortly thereafter, I ended up being sexually assaulted, and that just took a whole different turn on my life, my choices, my ability just to believe in who I am and what I was deserving of and where I wanted to go in my life. And it's taken me, it's been like a 17-year road, really, but I'm blessed for it because in the last 8, I get to help others through their healing and happiness journey, which I love. So cut to injury, no longer playing soccer. I'm not really in a career, so I'm just doing the thing. As a strength and conditioning specialist, I worked with a lot of soccer teams, kind of getting involved in that realm, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do long term. And again, making bad choices. Then I got into a really narcissistic relationship that over a 5-year period of time really created a lot of labels. I felt a loss of who I was without him, who I was supposed to be in life. So just it cascaded into a lot of just negative mindsets, a lot of thought process. And so now looking back, I'm like grateful for all those things, right? Because it's taken me down the path of healing and happiness and then how to pour into others with that. But at the time, when I ended that 5-year relationship, I was lost. And in my mind, I'm like, who am I without these labels that I'd been given, right? And so it was a matter of 2 things, kind of redefining and learning, like going inward and really learning who I was, who I wanted to be, who I stood for, and then living life basically undefined by all of those things, using them to propel me, but not necessarily like letting them define me and that weight be heavy on my shoulders, right? So it's been a long process, but I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, okay, so I just heard a couple of things come out of that. So I heard like trying to figure out your identity after soccer, like your career, after an assault, and then after this pretty heavy relationship, like each of these pieces kind of having to like figure that out. What do you think is most helpful for you in like each of those chunks, figuring out like, okay, I have this like loss or this shift or this transition, this change.
Yeah.
who the heck am I after that?
Yeah. So, and I think with any journey, any person, because more often than not, we have layers, right? We have things we've been through, and how our body captures that and holds on to it can be different for every single person. So you and I could be in the same traumatic moment or experience, and we're going to hold on to that differently. So the thing that I really like to educate and really allow you to realize is, one, you're not alone. And I think that was huge for me, like thinking I was like out on this island, like no one else had been through a bad breakup, please. And no one else had been through a career-ending injury, please, right? So recognizing and truly believing I'm not alone, and that there is life on the other side, being the other big component of that. And then I think as well, just understanding that in those layers, as you start to clear things out, whether it be EMDR, which has been a godsend for me, EMDR, mind-body connection, through energy work and different things. There's a lot of different facets, a lot of different alternative therapies, acupuncture, and a ton of different other things that throughout that journey and whatever layer you're in, if something didn't work before, it wasn't the right timing, it might be the thing you need now. So very infrequently do I see someone, or even with my own journey, where one thing was like the end all be all, right? So it's different layers at different times. And that even includes not feeling like, if you've been powering through, trying to work on yourself, trying to turn inward and really clear out some of the stuff, and it's been 4, 5, 6 months, maybe a year, and you're tired and you want a break, take a break, right? Like there's a part in the journey and a point in the journey where taking that break is super helpful, because you have to be able to process, you have to be able to implement where you're at in that new layer, and then the right thing, whether it be a new type of therapy or going back to something you did years ago. And that's ultimately, when I started working with you, what was that, like 18 months ago? I had done EMDR 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was so powerful back then, but I was also not the person I am now, right? And so when I first came to you, I had an inkling that it was the thing I needed now again in my life to just really help me clear some of this and be able to serve in the greatest capacity that I can. So I think the big takeaway is just realizing that different layers, different timing of your journey requires different help, different books, different therapists, all those things. So
yeah, that layers thing I think is important. And I always talk to clients about that, because I think like I almost think about it like scooping the pool, right? Like we get a layer off and we feel really good and clean, and it's exactly where we're at right now and it's working. And then later we go on and something else kind of stirs up to the surface. And maybe that's like a new breakup or a new relationship. Maybe that's just timing. Like clients ask all the time, like, why is this happening and coming up for me right now? I thought I already like worked through this stuff, right? And I'm like, well, for whatever reason, your body is ready, your brain is ready, you're at a time and space in your life where maybe things have calmed down, and now like some more of the stuff is coming up and you're just ready to kind of work through it, right?
Right. Absolutely. Okay. And you got to think, like in a 5-year narcissistic relationship, there's gonna be layers in just that alone, right? Let alone other traumas and stuff. So yeah, definitely.
I love that you bring up that point of you're not alone. I think that was like one of the biggest driving forces of like starting a community where women could kind of come together and really meet each other and get that support. Because you're talking about coming out of a narcissistic relationship where I'd say like a majority of the women in here in this group have experienced like at a minimum narcissistic tendencies from their partners, right? I call them the egomaniac in my program.
Right.
To look at like...
They're out there. There's unfortunately too many of them, right?
Yes. That they've like, whatever is their deal, it's coming at the expense of this poor woman who's like stayed way too long and got sucked into it and now has all these like trauma after effects, right? And so just recognizing like, oh my gosh, because so the thing I hear probably more than anything is I feel stupid. I feel stupid that I stayed in that relationship. I feel stupid that I got in it, whether it was the narcissist, whether it was the cheater, whether it was whatever. I feel stupid. And I feel like everybody's judging me, and I feel like I should have been smarter than this because I work with like brilliant, successful women. And you and I both like we're in these relationships, and I don't know about you, but I certainly felt that. Like, why was I such an effing idiot that I got into that and I stayed in it?
Yeah, like judgment of character. How did I not see this earlier? Like, why did I stay in it for 5 years? And really, the bulk of that was the last 18 months, probably, where it really started to get out of hand, if you will. But it all led up to that point, right? Those first few years, I still justified all the things that normally should be a red flag, but I was lost. At that time, I didn't have soccer. I didn't have a career. I was in the middle. So then I just jumped into this relationship where I allowed that to define me. The activities we did defined me, who I was, what friends we had, and cars we drove, and bags we carried, and all of that. I allowed that to just like fill me. And even though it wasn't fulfilled internally, it was this desire to have an identity rather than looking in and creating my own, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So your big platform and big message, which I love, is like be undefined. What does that look like for you, and like stepping out of that? So you're letting go of this identity of like, I need to have this purse, or, you know, this external world that you lived in this relationship. Like how does that be undefined? How does that kind of kick in when you talk about identity?
Yeah, so be undefined for me, and it sits with me heavy, is that a lot of the clients that I work with are defined by something in their life, whether it be a rape or the narcissistic relationship or the loss of a loved one or parental abuse or early childhood abuse and things like that. And it's literally like they have allowed that to define who they are and how they should move forward into life and even into their adult life. So they're carrying this baggage with them. And I really want other people to realize that no matter what your past has in it or has had in it, it does not need to define who you are. And so it's a matter of being undefined, right? And shedding these layers that weigh us down so we can really ultimately unbecome, so that we can be who we're supposed to be, rather than we try so hard to become something, right? So we're grasping, like, I want to be the physical therapist, or I want to be and we're putting our identity into that versus unbecoming all of those labels and loss and heartache and all of those things to really allow ourselves to flourish and be who we were ultimately always meant to be. We just start getting this, layering on us of experiences and it could be a bully in 6th grade, right? That tells you you're not smart because you got to be on the math test, and here you are 40 wanting to be an accountant, but last thing, in your mind, you're thinking, well, I'm not smart. But really, like, you're not, or I'm not good at numbers or whatever it might be. So you're allowing that one person's statement or action towards you, or multiple actions towards you, now define later into your life who you think you are and who you think you should be. And so the be undefined is really ultimately that, is like, let it all go. Be undefined by all of those things, whether it's 100 of them, 2 of them, right? And just be who you want to be. Live life feeling fulfilled and in your zone of genius, doing what you love, So that's where it comes from. Yeah.
We talk about that in here as like the narratives, right? The stories you tell yourself about like all of this thing, right? And it's made up of all those past experiences, whether it was a teacher who picked on you once in class, or the bully in 6th grade, or the boyfriend who made you feel like you weren't enough, or whatever that is. And those they keep layering on. And, it's so interesting watching women when they come in at like 25 trying to work through that versus women who come in at 50 and work through that, because there's a different set of layers that are there that you've just kept building and building and building. So your foundation is built on like these beliefs, and however much you build on top of it, like, can determine how much kind of there is to kind of work through.
Right. Because we believe what we tell ourselves, right? The brain is a powerful thing. So if I'm constantly saying I'm fat, or I'm not deserving, or if I'm successful, then bad things happen, or whatever it might be, if I continue to tell myself that, that's my reality.
Mhm.
right? And so until we can flip that and really start to look at the positive things and take ourselves out of the rabbit hole, when we start to go down that rabbit hole and start to reshift and bring ourselves into, even if it's fake it till you make it initially, right? But bring ourselves into that realm of, this is what I want to be. This is who I am. Ultimately, this is what I believe. All these other things are just muddying the water.
So if we start with like the woman who's like just getting out of a relationship. So for me, one of the hardest things that I've shared with you is when I was getting divorced, like getting those words out of my mouth. Like I don't know who even came up with the word divorcee, but I was like, every time I went to say it, like kind of threw up. Like,
is that your label? Is that what you're defined as now? You've been divorced, and now there's this like negative, right?
Yeah, totally. Because to me,
you're not good enough because you couldn't even last in a relationship or whatever.
Exactly. Yes, to me, it meant like I was a failure. My marriage failed was the label that I initially carried on. And now that I'm divorced, it's because I'm a failure. And to throw the layer on top of it for me was that I was a counselor and I was helping people in their marriages and relationships. Who the hell am I? Like now all of a sudden I've gone from like, I can't make this relationship work to like, I'm a failure at my relationship to I'm a failure in my career to I am a failure at life. Like I went like straight there so fast.
And it is normal. I mean, it's so, I shouldn't say it's normal. It is normal for us to do that, right? We're wired in that negative bias. So we're going to take ourselves down that road to kind of almost justify where we're at, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and everything was a reminder of it, right? Like checking the box, like on like changing my last name, because then everybody knew. Plus, like going through the process of that felt shameful. To checking the box, like from like instead of married, I was now checking the box like single, or that there's a box for divorce. Like who cares, right? Like just making that shift. I was like, oh my God,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, this is literally following me in every area of my life.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Like just even filling out a form online for like, I don't know, to sign up for Twitter or something was like, what's your marital status? I'm like, do I have to say divorce? Can I just say single? Like,
right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
So it followed me everywhere. So like in thinking of back to that time, like what's your advice for women who are like brand new, fresh, and they're trying to figure out who the hell am I? Like, am I just a mom now? Am I just a divorcee? Am I an employee? Like, who am I without this label?
And I think so. We get into identity, right? And identity ultimately should be who we are, the values that we have, not based on the vehicle of how we serve. So like, for instance, my value is always be respectful. That is like a Fox family thing. Like it doesn't matter what mood we're in, what mindset we're in, we are always respectful because we always have the choice to do that, right? And we're kind and we're serving of others. And so when we ultimately comes down to it, I might look. So one thing you guys could do on paper would be to sit and say, write down like, what are all the jobs that I've had in my life? So you list them, right? Front desk person. I've been a strength and conditioning coach. I've been a coach. I've been a teacher. I'm a professor. So, you go through this list and then you write down all of the things that in those jobs that like your job tasks that you had to do on your day to day to complete your title, right? And then you go through and you circle in those job tasks, the top 5, the thing that just fills you up, that energizes you. And there's usually a recurring theme, right? Like for me, it's like teacher, coach, leader, no matter what the job was, right? It always kind of went back to that. And that's what I love. That's what fuels me. And so when you really get into narrowing down like who you are, how you serve, again, it has nothing to do with the external world. It has everything to do with internal. At the end of the day, when you get on the covers, are you filled? Because I can tell you guys right now, if my cup isn't full, and I shouldn't rely on anyone else to fill my cup, but if my cup is not full, I cannot show up as a parent. I cannot show up as a clinician. I cannot show up as a coach. And so it's really important for me to make sure that I'm carving out time to fill my cup, but also that I know what that is, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we know what it is that we thrive on, and that might go back to your first job when you were 15 before all these layers happened. And you were like, I loved that. I loved that job. I did X, Y, and Z, and that felt good. But now 15 years later, I have all these layers and I don't even know what brings me joy anymore. Right. So my thing to you guys would be just really sit down and look at like, what is it that brings you energy? What is it that brings you love and light? And at the end of the day, you feel like your cup is full, because then ultimately you can start pouring into others, whether it be your children or your husband or a new boyfriend or but ultimately yourself, right? Like that saying, like, ain't nobody happy if mama ain't happy, kind of like legitimately, right? So we really want to make sure that we aren't requiring or expecting anybody else to fill our cups, but that we are doing it for ourselves.
Yeah. So filling up your bucket first, really recognizing, like, I love that values exercise, right? Just going through, whatever roles you've had, whether it was career or just like mom or whatever that is, like what parts of those roles have really filled you up, to be able to identify what are the values that were associated to those, to figure out like what are the things that really fill up your bucket. So, and fill that up. What I heard you say is fill that up before you pour into anyone else, or like you can't.
Totally. And I've even noticed that with COVID, right? Because now I'm home 2 days a week as a stay-at-home mom on those 2 days, and then clinically and coaching on the other 4. And so those 2 days now that I'm home, I'm like, and he's 5, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I am not the creative play kind of mom, right? That does not fill my cup. Let's go outside and kick a ball around, or let's build Legos or something, that I love, yet I don't want to take that away from him. But even at the end of the day of being mom, I feel fulfilled when we've had quality time together, but also filled my cup in the things that I enjoy doing, right?
Yeah, cool.
Balance, for sure.
I love it. I have a couple more questions for you, and then I won't run too long, but like, I think like sometimes we put all this pressure on relationships that like we need to, like, our search for happiness, and this probably comes from Disney, right? Our search for happiness comes from like finding the one. Like our ultimate goal in life, like growing up, is like women are taught in our culture, like you don't have a lot of value until you have a ring on your finger. And then your job is to get married and have kids and all of that. And until you do that, like, you don't have value. And then once you do that, so many women are like, okay, I checked all the boxes. Now what? Like there's so much pressure on this and finding the one, that I think then 2 things happen. Women stop doing all the things that make them happy and fill them up because they found this person that's the one. And then if that person is then removed, part of that identity loss is like, now I've lost my happiness. Like I've equated my partner, my relationship with now my happiness, and now I've lost that. So then part of that is like, not only who am I without that, but like, how do I have happiness without that? Like, what are your thoughts? That's kind of like a long ramble, but.
Sure. Well, first of all, I think happiness comes from within, right? So we go back to that, like utilizing someone else to fill your cup in any form or fashion. So in a happiness state, like I'm happy because I'm with this person, or I got the person I wanted, or the car that I'm driving, or the house that I have, or whatever that is. When at the end of the day, that's why when you've checked all the boxes, you're not truly don't have happiness and joy, is because somewhere along the line, you've lost yourself. And that is when then that thing is, you get in a car accident and the car is totaled, or the divorce or the death occurs and that person is no longer in your life. You've lost somewhere along the lines, right? And sometimes I see that too, is where we're putting so much energy and effort into maintaining the relationship and maintaining the what it looks like and what it feels like, that we ultimately have taken, like we have a hard time looking inwardly, right? Or we're afraid of, if we truly are who we're supposed to be, that person won't love me, or they'll leave me, or whatever that might be. And so I think the biggest thing is just truly realizing that happiness comes from within, and the happier you are and the more full your cup is, the better and the stronger and the more loving your relationship truly can be. Because again, it's nourished to flourish, right? So when we're full and we can radiate that out, we're going to get back what we give. And so if what we're giving is positive and happy and joyful, we're going to get that back. And I think as we get lost in it, when that separation happens, it's really hard to find that again because we're so far down. And that's where a lot of people turn outwardly, right? So they can jump right back into another relationship or another job or a different, whatever it is, versus just truly taking the time to look internally and grow within.
I love that because I definitely found that at the end of my marriage was like, I felt like totally lost. Like, I'm like, I had really pulled away from a lot of my friendships because there was conflict with the friends, right? Like he didn't really enjoy those friendships or me out doing those things with friends and was really threatened by that. And so I gave up a lot of my or pulled away from a lot of my female friendships. I had stopped doing a lot of the things I really super loved doing. I had really given up a lot of the pieces of myself that when I look back on it, those were the things that he fell in love with in the first place, right? He fell in love with the girl who had those friends and that did those things.
Yes.
So at the end, I pulled away throughout the relationship and coming at the end of it, I was like, I have no idea who the hell I am anymore. What do I even like doing? What do I want to do? And I felt I was so isolated and really without a lot of those coping skills because I'd kind of let them go, right? So for women that are really trying to figure out who their identity is now that they're outside of the relationship and maybe they're in that same place that I was where I'd given up so many things, what are some of your advice? What's some of your tips for regaining that part or figuring out who you are now or figuring out who your best self is really?
So and I love that question, your best self. I love that. So actually I have a free downloadable and it's called my F-bombs. Sorry guys, but I can be a sailor sometimes, but F-bombs stand for Fox, be optimal mind and body. And I think it ultimately starts there. It starts with doing the little things, kind of almost like a clean, rather than focusing on the relationship and what you've lost and how you feel, but really looking at it as I have a white canvas here that has no paint on it at all. And I have all these paints, all of these brushes, and I can make this what I want it to be, whether some of it comes from before, I played soccer, I had these friends and I still love those friends and I want them back. Or it's, those were friends in that season of life and they're no longer in my life. I don't necessarily need them in my life, and I'm going to find a new tribe, whatever it might be, but recognizing that from a positive standpoint, the universe, in a sense, has given you this clean slate where you can take what's happened for you along those stages of life and now propel them into just creating a new canvas. And you might get halfway through and then want to erase some of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, think of an 8-year-old kid who's like, I'm going to try skateboarding, and then I'm going to go rollerblade, and then I'm going to go play soccer, right? They're working through the details of what fills me up, what gives me happiness, what do I do? Where does my tribe? What does that look like? Where do I want? What do I want 3 years from now to look like? Do I want it to be surrounded by women that are like-minded, that are always trying to empower themselves? Well, then that's the tribe I'm going to go find. Is it moms? Because now I'm a single mom and I want the support group of other single moms who are kicking butt in life, right? But realizing that everything that's happened up to this point has happened for you as long as you look at it that way. So really taking that clean canvas and start to explore. I mean, it might be something like I go hiking now and hiking was never in my routine before, right? Or, I go on the green belt or I go golf or I try something new and try it. And if you don't like it, cool. But I think where we get caught up is we always think of ourselves as failing. And that's a big one I see a lot, especially, if I'm going to try something new, you're trying a new streaming here. And so it's if it didn't work, are you a failure or was it trial and error? And so when we're looking at entertaining new things, maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's, taking baths every night to relax, and we don't love it, do we automatically label it as a failure? And so it takes us down farther. Oh, I tried that and it didn't work, I must be a failure. And we get into that victim mindset versus I'm going to try this. And if I don't love it, cool, it's trial and error, I'm going to move on, right? So I think when we ultimately come back to redefining who you want to be, that's the thing, is you're going to unbecome all those labels if you can really sit down with yourself and say, who is it that if I tomorrow was this person, what would that look like? And a lot of times that's looking at like your people who inspire you, your mentors, things like the people that resonate with you, and saying like, I need to look like that. What are some of the qualities in that person that I'm drawn to? And I want to be that, right? And then start to work in that direction. So just using others as an inspiration, but also deeply knowing who it is you ultimately want to be and coming back to your values.
So many gems in there. I love it. Like you just touched on, we just talked last week in boot camp about life is happening for you, not to you, right? Which I love that you have that same message. And then the other thing you brought up that I've been like really focusing on with my coach is this idea of like, is it a failure? Like I really learned that going through my marriage of like, I stopped like saying the word failed marriage. Like it wasn't a failure. Yeah. I think it would have been a failure had I continued to stay there, knowing that I outgrew it. It wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to be extraordinary. Yes. It wasn't going to be anything, right? Like that was like such a big mind shift for me.
Yes.
That I swear this is LaCroix. I'm not drinking it. That it wasn't a failure. It was just like we were together as long as we needed to be together, and now it was time to let it go because we were no longer helping each other grow and helping each other be our best selves. We're actually pulling each other backwards. And so it was really a failure to stay. That was huge for me. And then the other thing I've been working on is I just keep hearing this message over and over again. It's like not a failure. It's a trial. Like I was at like a Tony Robbins thing years ago, and he said like, Colonel Sanders, like with the fried KFC chicken or whatever, like went and knocked on like 1,000 doors or something before he got a yes. It was like 960 or 100 and I don't know, some 1,000 doors before he got a yes. And it was never like, they were never failures. It was, I need to do something different. I need to adapt my tactics. It's information I'm learning.
Right.
If you're committed to the goal, there is no such thing as failure. It's just like you're gathering information and either tweaking the way you do it or changing it, right? And in dating, women, like this is the big thing I hear in coaching is like, I'm failing in dating. Like I had a bad date, another bad date. I'm never going to find anybody. So I just quit. I give up. Like we're just done here. Closing this chapter, I will be alone forever. I'm like, you're 26. Like you literally have been alone like for 3 months your whole adult life. Like why are we assuming that the next 80 years is going to be nothing but like destiny? Yes. Right? Yes. Let's learn from this. You're learning to recognize the patterns. You're learning to recognize the guys that you don't want. The clearer you get and the pickier you get, like the harder it's going to be to find somebody to like date because you're not just settling for crap anymore. You're like insisting on something amazing. Like
you have a checklist and you really like honor that, right? Versus, I'll go on another date because they show interest. Well, awesome. But is that really the person you want to spend the rest of your life with? Do they help you, you know?
No. And don't do that. I hate that. Like, would you want somebody to do that for you? Like, it's like pity dating. Like, don't do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I also feel like it's when we're full, right? When we've looked inwardly and our cup is full and we are truly happy, that one, we attract that person, right? But we're also more confident to be like, no thanks, tried it, no thanks, right? So we go into it with a whole different mindset and energy than if we're victim down in the dumps. I'm a failure. I guess I'll try this again. This guy's showing interest. Okay, I'll go on a date, right? There's a whole different energy when you show up for that.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like cake.
Show up for yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to think of it as cake. Like you shouldn't start dating until you feel like you're like whole and complete and your life is amazing. And anybody you're going to add to it is just going to add something like super amazing to it. Like you are already a delicious chocolate cake. You're amazing. You're good all by yourself. You don't need frosting. Like you are going to be so yummy just like the way it is.
Yes.
Now, if we found the perfect kind of frosting, it's not too sweet, it's not too whatever, it just like complements it perfectly, the cake, it just gets even better. But it is good cake without any frosting, right? Like that's how we want to be before we start showing up in dating.
I agree.
Cake.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
All my analogies have to do with food. I'm like, pizza, cake. Clearly, I'm gaining my quarantine 20. But.
You're a baker now too. I'm coming over for that cake.
Yeah.
But it's true. And I think what happens is somewhere along the lines, because we've lost that, we don't even know where to start. We don't even know what that feels like anymore. We just, it's dark. It's at the bottom, right? It feels heavy. And to be able to, I think the other thing that I want to say here is that, so in my line of work, we really work to complete the emotions, right? So just because something happened in your past doesn't mean you have to relive it to let it go. And I think that's super important for the audience to hear, is that you can rewire it and rewrite your story without reliving it. Finding a practitioner that can help you do that is so powerful, so that you can just move forward, right? You can shed those layers and move forward, because ultimately what happens is all of those layers that we have from over the years, childhood, high school, someone said this, he said that, I dated so-and-so who was a whatever you want to call it, and all of these layers, what happens is our storage unit gets full. So speaking of analogies, and I don't use food, but I probably should start, is a storage unit. So if I'm moving out of my house and I have all this furniture that I've collected over the years from, my mom handed it down and my grandparents didn't need anymore, and I found this at a garage sale, and it's like all of these things, right? And I put them in a storage unit while I'm moving out of the house. And I move into this new beautiful home, and I'm like, oh, I don't really want to bring all of this old yucky stuff, right, into my new home. So I go out and buy new furniture, but I don't get rid of what's in storage. I just leave it. It's like out of sight, out of mind in a sense. And so here I am paying rent every single day to that storage, and that's how it is in our systems. And so if we can come in and we can get rid of that coffee table and dump the couch, sell the cabinets, whatever it is, and start to clear out that storage unit, we have more energy, more space for the things we desire, the things we want, and for our life in the current. The other piece of that I'll say is, it's like if I gave you $101 bills right now, and you had so much in storage that was $70 each day, right? So you just hand over $70, you got 30 left for you for the rest of the day. Well, by noon, you're exhausted. 2 o'clock, you're having that sleepy hour and you want caffeine because you're exhausted, but that's because your system is so taxed holding on to all this stuff from the past, right? Yeah. So I think it's super important for us to realize truly how empowering and necessary it is to clear out that old junk, if you will.
I love that analogy. That's really great. Don't pay rent for storage you don't need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Another golden gem. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Pearls.
All right. So we are at 37 minutes, and I try to tell the ladies I try not to go too far over 30 minutes because,
makes sense.
Yes, they spend a lot of time watching all of the information here, and I don't want to bore them to death. So do you have anything else on this topic that they just need to know before we wrap it up?
I think just what weighs heavy on me, and it goes back to my little motto, is just be undefined. Like all of these things that have happened for you in your life, use them to build you up and put you up on that platform you want to be on, and just really be who you're supposed to be, because that's why you're here on this earth, is to be you, and you are the only person that can be you. So be freaking good at it, because we love you for it.
I love that. Good. You mentioned one of your downloadables, your F-bombs.
Yeah.
Do you want to share in the group like the link to be able to get that?
For sure. So normally it would be drbriannfox.com. However, I have malicious malware currently that I'm trying to work on getting out. So just email me. I'm happy to just send you the PDF. My email is Breann, so it's BREANN at drbriannfox.com. Sorry, it's the long way. So Breann at drbriannfox.com, and I will shoot that over to you because it goes through my 5 F-bombs to really get into that Be Optimal Mind and Body, and I would love for you guys to have that.
Cool. All right, I will put that in the, I'll put just a little summary of some of the things we talked about in here, and I'll put your email in there for the ladies to email you and be able to get that. Anything else?
No, you guys, go be you. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. Yeah. I definitely would love for you to come back.
I would love it too. Thank you guys so much. Have a blessed day.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.